Welcome to the Creatorpreneurs podcast, where we delve into how creatorpreneurs monetize their knowledge and how you can become one too. My name is Rico Lazo, joined in the studio by my co-host Antonio Lazo. How are you doing today?
Great to be back, episode 4. It's amazing how fast these episodes fly by. Looking very forward to the episode we have in store today. We're going to be talking about artificial intelligence or AI and some use cases that we can step through to walk our audience and those tuning in to understand better these tools.
And as you mentioned, this show is about monetizing knowledge as a creatorpreneur. And the one thing we can see in studying these trend reports is that the common thread amongst all these reports is that the top creators, the top creatorpreneurs who are monetizing over 6 figures a year are mostly using AI tools at a much higher rate than the average user. In fact, I want to just throw out some statistics here for you that 86% of top creators are using AI monthly and 72% are using it daily or even weekly. And so again, the notion is imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. You need to be using AI tools, especially if you're going it alone and you don't have somebody that can help you along. I'm lucky that I have my twin brother joining me on this journey of becoming creatorpreneurs. But at the end of the day, what would you say, Antonio, for people who've not yet used AI tools or they're already content creators, they've not yet dipped their toes into the water? How can they get started using AI?
Well, what we've found in our own work of becoming creatorpreneurs is this notion that you do need to seek out a use. Sure, you can play around with the tool and just mess around with it, if you will. But if you can find some particular use cases, a problem that you're trying to solve, you have a particular task at hand, that really provides some guidelines of the type of questions you can go ahead and ask a chatbot. And for those who have never touched ChatGPT or other chatbots, I want to share really just a very simple example. Looking at the moms and the dads out there who are really pulling double duty, working full time, they have to go home and then cook for the kids. For whatever reason, they couldn't stop by the grocery store, the supermarket to pick up maybe some missing ingredients. They get home, they're too tired to go back out. They see their 3 kids, all hungry. What do? What are your options? You can certainly look in Google. You can look in YouTube. You can look on some other social media platforms, for example, Instagram. I do it myself, save these recipes. But what I find is when I have these recipes on my phone, I literally have to do like a screenshot so I can see the list of ingredients. But it still requires quite a bit of cognitive effort. It's not as easy as 1, 2, 3. The benefit of using ChatGPT is you literally can pull out the individual ingredients from the fridge, from your cupboard, line it up on the table, the counter, wherever your prep station is, and you just type in or key into ChatGPT, okay, ChatGPT, I'm hungry, I've got 3 young kids, they're all looking at me. Some don't like these particular ingredients. This is what I have. I've got a half can of tomatoes, I've got a half pound or a half kilo of beef, and you just literally list out the ingredients by product, and you would say to the chatbot, can you help me prepare a dish taking into some of these considerations? You hit enter, and literally in 60 seconds, you can have a full-on recipe that walks you step by step, more than one recipe, in fact, multiple recipes you can pick from, and it provides detailed steps to prepare a very, very quick and easy meal, and most likely it's something that you would not have come up by yourself. So it's just one simple use case that I can share with the moms and dads that are listening in and tuning in who may not used ChatGPT or other AI tools. That's a very simple example.
Great example, however. I think I'm still surprised that there's a lot of people who have yet to try out AI tools, including ChatGPT. I think it's one of the first. And I think for me, I'll just share a personal experience. So you and I ran in a 10K race back in November of last year here in Barranquilla. And I specifically wanted to ask ChatGPT to help me prepare for this race by giving me a training plan. And the reason is simple. The last time I did this a couple of years ago, I thought I knew better. I was going to cobble together from Google searches and running magazines my own training plan. I was overzealous, overambitious, and ended up injuring myself because I didn't know what I was doing. The advantage of using ChatGPT, it's like having a virtual coach. You literally are putting into the prompt, I'm this old, these are my goals, this is my goal time, this is how much time I have to train per week, this is how much mileage or kilometers I want to run each week, and it will then generate a training plan. I'm not saying this is gonna take you 5 or 10 minutes. This is literally as long as it takes to write in the prompt, help me with the race plan, punch in a few things, and then the output comes right out. So it's a really incredible tool. What I want to say is I think when you find a use case in your personal life, that's when you start to see the value that AI tools can afford you. Again, if you're trying to monetize your money, having a free resource can be a real game changer.
Absolutely. And in fact, those are just two very personal and easy to use examples. I want to share maybe a couple more examples. One was I was speaking with a prospective client, and this is a young single mom, didn't have a lot of time available, and we were reviewing her socials, and she mentioned that she has a new TikTok account, but that she was really hoping to retrieve her other TikTok account, which had 3,000 followers. And while that's not a large amount, it was definitely much higher than her new account has. And I asked her, well, why haven't you gotten your account back? Have you tried getting your password? And she kind of threw up her hands in the air saying, oh, I don't know how to do it. I have no idea. I literally just went into Gemini, Google's newly named ChatGPT, and we'll step into some of those tools later on. But I literally put in there, what are the steps required to recoup my TikTok password and or account access? Enter. And literally within 30 seconds, I got a very, very detailed list of instructions of what to do exactly, step by step. I copy and pasted that message into WhatsApp. I sent it to her. A few moments later, she wrote back very joyous, saying she was able to recoup her account. And so that's really just one simple example of like, instead of using a traditional search in Google, you can use these chatbots and they'll provide you with very, very detailed instructions and step-by-step ways that you can find very valuable information.
I love that you're talking about using it as a search engine, but before we jump into that, I think you wanted to share one more story about how you're using it as a search engine.
Exactly. As we're here in Aldras Play in Barranquilla, Colombia, we live here in Colombia. I've been here for a number of years at this point. And every year in Colombia, the way you pay your tax on your vehicle, it's a little bit different than you pay in the United States. Here, it's a yearly basis. You have both the municipal tax and the state equivalent tax. And I was corresponding with the sales agent who sold me the vehicle last year, but he's in Medellin. I'm now in Barranquilla. So I was a little bit at a loss for who I could ask to figure this out. I was doing some searches on Google myself, was really frustrated with the whole process. And I was like, let me just go into Gemini. Let me just type in these questions of how do I pay my municipal tax? How do I pay my department tax or the state tax equivalent here? Hit enter. And lo and behold, within a matter of seconds, I was able to get the very, very detailed steps of what I had to do, which websites to go, the steps to follow, where to click on the web page as well. So it's not just saying, just go to this page and that's it. They leave you hanging. No, it's literally look for this section, click here, do this, do that. And I was very happy that it was just so simple by using these AI tools.
Again, another great use case of just using these AI chatbots as a search engine, because you're not limited to sort of simple search terms. I mean, you can do a longer search term, but the longer the search term typically in a Google search, the less likely you're going to find what you need. Or you might find what you need on various websites and then have to cobble this all together. The great thing with these chatbots is that it gets compiled all into one output, and from there, it makes things so easy. So thank you for sharing that. But can you talk a little bit about how you're crafting your message? When you're asking these chatbots for this output, how do you go about that?
Well, that's a very good question. In fact, when you first start interfacing with ChatGPT or Gemini or the other chatbots we're going to get into in a bit more detail later in the show, it's basically just a chat interface. It's very similar to Messenger or other type of chat experiences people have had in the past, whether that's WhatsApp when you're chatting with somebody else, or maybe a chatbot for some kind of customer service rep, etc. But it really is this notion of you're asking it information and you're getting information back. And so I kind of want to throw it back to you, Rico. I heard of this term that's called prompt engineering a few months ago, and I thought, what is prompt engineering? This notion that you can write instructions to the chat to get better outputs. I was a little bit thrown off by what is this notion of prompt engineering. And just when you hear the word engineer, it sounds super sophisticated, right? So I would like you to explain maybe, Rico, as the AI expert in-house for our initiatives, what is prompt engineering? Do people need to pay attention to it? What can our listeners take away from today's show when we talk about prompt engineering?
Yes, I had the same sort of reservations. When I first heard prompt engineering, I was thinking this reminds me of, I don't know if it was Waterboy, is that the Adam Sandler movie where they talk about this idea of the water distribution engineer, sort of this highfalutin term or trying to make something sound grandiose or bigger than it actually is. But prompt engineering is simply the way that you craft your question in this chatbot, this little prompt, right? This little prompt window. So I want to go ahead and just read the definition from Wikipedia, then I'll put it into layman's terms. But in essence, prompt engineering is the process of structuring text that can be interpreted and understood by a generative AI model. So again, what it's saying is the way that you ask the chatbot for an output is by asking a question. And to your earlier point, isn't that easy? I'm college educated. I have a college degree. I mean, I know how to write. But the reality is you have to be very nuanced and be very structured in how you're going about asking your questions. And why is that important? Well, garbage in, garbage out. The better the question is crafted, the better the response you're going to get. And I think it's really, really important to understand that there are certain ways to go about it to get the best results. And I think it's also important to highlight that you have a certain character limit on how much you can type into these chatbot windows. But what I wanted to also say is that similar to the recipe example that you gave earlier, this is how you're going to want to prompt these AI chatbots by asking it to be very procedural. It's almost like you're giving an employee steps to follow of what you want. By being very specific, you're going to get the best results possible.
Yes, and it's very important. I think we can kind of think of this similar to how you would speak to a child. I think it's important to recognize that these chatbots, they're not humans. It is an artificial intelligence. It's a computer program in essence. But by setting up your prompt, and each chatbot has its own limit. We're talking about anywhere between 500 to 2,000 words approximately, which can be quite a bit of text. But you'll be surprised that the more time and effort you put up front into the text prompt, and again, we're not talking about prose here. We're talking about very, very detailed instructions of what you're looking for. And so the more detail you can provide, you're much more likely to get the end result. And also another important point to highlight here is this notion that when you're using these tools, you cannot just chat ad infinitum. You have to be succinct because at some point you will be cut off with these free tools. Just they're saying you've reached your number of prompts, the limit until 2 p.m. or 4 p.m., whatever the case is, and you have to just wait it out, sit out. So if you can be very succinct, particularly in the very first prompt, but even in your subsequent responses, being concise, but being very clear with what you're looking for.
And it's like any skill that you build, the more you do it, the easier it comes. Then you start to develop this little bit of intuition about the best way to go about asking these questions.
Another important concept to be aware of is that when you're actually logging into, say, ChatGPT for the very first time, you're presented with a little warning message to not take all that you read as factual. And so that really harkens back to this notion of hallucination, chatbot hallucination. So I'd like to ask you, for the purposes of our audience, what is this notion of chatbot hallucination? What should the viewers be on the watch for when it comes down to the response they're getting back from these chatbots? Any particular concern? Walk us through that process.
You should definitely question what you're getting in terms of output from any of these chatbots. You can't take it just at face value and assume this is without a doubt scientifically proven hard facts. And in fact, there's even this notion that what chatbots generate, the responses can be false, misleading, entirely fabricated, and beyond that, these chatbots can be insistent that what they're saying is indeed factually true. We want to urge caution when you're interacting with these chatbots. So that's why it's very, very important to ask follow-up questions. This is not the kind of situation where you ask one question, you get a response, and you're good to go. It's really important to look at it as an iterative process where you're constantly going back and forth. You do want to limit, in some ways, the amount of questions you're asking to not be timed out or to have too much text generated, but you also want to question anything that is output, because if it's not accurate, it could lead you down the wrong path depending upon the project you're working on.
And that's a very good point you bring up. And also, I think you'll notice when you get your hands wet, when you get some experience working with these different chatbots, just the type of responses you're getting. And so sometimes you may be a little frustrated with the outputs that that you're getting back. And I think that's kind of indicative in many ways to how you're inputting your prompts. If you're not getting the prompt output that you're expecting, it's sort of this notion of junk in, junk out. And again, it's not a critique of the person using the tool. It's just maybe an indication that you could work on your prompts. So therefore, you may need to be a little bit stern with some of these chatbots. Don't feel threatened or feel offended saying, oh my gosh, I can't speak to the chatbot that way. I mean, I'm not talking about being profane, but you can be stern. It's almost like scolding a child. And you can say, look, I've asked you that same question 3 times. You've provided the wrong answer each time. One example I can share with you is related to Claude.ai. And so I asked Gemini the other day, please give me some information about Claude.ai. That's actually the URL that you would input to get to this tool. And it gave me a very simple response saying, oh, I don't know that person. And so I said, no, not Claude as in a human being, Claude.ai, the artificial intelligence tool put out by Anthropic. And then it comes back as very effusive, saying, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I misunderstood your question. Oh yes, Claude.ai is XYZ, and it gives you a very, very descriptive response. So you have to play around with these tools to kind of get your bearings, to understand the way these tools work. But just again, it really means try to understand that these are not perfect tools, and it does take some practice and effort to get better at doing so.
As you were speaking, I was thinking this notion of operator error, right? At the end of the day, if you don't know what you're doing, you can't expect to get perfect results. It does take practice. Practice makes perfect. And so one suggestion that I have, and it's the way I like to prompt when I'm looking to brainstorm or trying to find the best possible output, I call this cascading questions. I don't think I invented this at all, but I like the name. I think it sounds cool. But the idea is ultimately what you want to do is you want to start with a broad question. And in your question format, you want to say, let's start broadly. Ask me one question at a time. And with each successive question that I ask you, or each successive response that I give you, you can sort of narrow down or whittle down your responses. And I love using multiple choice answers because that also expedites my answering. And I ask for it to give me an other option so I can always write in a response. And I use this methodology. I love it. I use it with my clients. And one client, I'm coaching him on looking at how he can transition into a career in the IT field. And I asked him point blankly, what do you want to do? He's like, I'm not really sure. And I'm thinking immediately, cascading questions. Let's start broadly. What do you want to do categorically? Do you want to work for a large company, a startup? Do you know of a specific, is it marketing, finance? Is it programming? Like, what do you want to do? And we were able to ultimately arrive at looking at maybe doing sales or marketing at a startup. So just stepping through this cascading questions can help you arrive at an answer that you maybe wouldn't even think of if you're just thinking to yourself on what I want to do.
And just to add on to that, what else you can do with the cascading questions is I'm very much detail oriented. So I only like to handle maybe one question at a time. And if you're not specific to these chatbots and using these cascading questions, it could literally throw 20 questions at you. So I'll be very specific in saying, look, I want to use cascading questions where we're going to use multiple choice format responses with letter E, the last option being other or open, that you can kind of type in the response. But then I'll take it one step further and I'll say, please only give me one question at a time, as my results, or my responses rather, to your question may alter the subsequent questions. So don't just hit me with 10 questions prefabricated and that's it. No, it's like based on my response, you're forcing the chatbot to kind of to retool, to rethink, and to come back with some very succinct and very proper questions based on your input. So it's an iterative process that you can really massage as you're having that interaction.
And I love that. You did a really excellent job in really talking about this notion that based on your response, it's going to spawn an even better question. And that's how you can start to learn how to ask more nuanced questions with this prompt engineering. And again, prompt engineering is simply the way that you're crafting your question. The better questions you ask, the better results you're going to get. I think it's helpful, though, to let our listeners and viewers know that it's not just about ChatGPT, right? And you mentioned Claude and you mentioned Gemini, but I think what we should probably do is just step through some of these AI chatbot platforms so people get a sense of why would I want to maybe use something else other than ChatGPT.
Well, let's start with, I think, just kind of a brief description of each. I know you've done some research as we've both experienced these different tools, and you'll definitely have a different sense for each tool. It's similar to using Google Docs versus Microsoft Word. They both get the job done in some capacity or some fashion, but you have your preference, right? So I think you're probably better equipped to walk us through these different tools. You've always been the advocate for using the different tools above and beyond ChatGPT. Even though I'm a strong advocate for the paid version of ChatGPT, I'm really rolling up the sleeves and learning to use the others. So maybe you can walk us through each of the tools and give us a brief description to help the audience understand what makes it different and why they would want to use it in a particular instance.
Definitely. And so what we'll do is I want to just state clearly that I use ChatGPT to help me categorize these different platforms by personality type. We all love variety in life, and I think that using one tool over and over again, it can be a bit repetitive, and just know that competition is a good thing, that there are other options other than ChatGPT is good. But yeah, just go ahead and name each of the platforms, and I'm going to read off what ChatGPT came up with as its personality profile, and then I'll give you my own little moniker or nickname, if you will, to help you understand, I think, what the tool is good for or my own experiences using them.
Well, let's just start with ChatGPT. I think from a namesake perspective, everybody's heard about it. I think some people might even equate ChatGPT as the primary tool for AI. So let's start with ChatGPT and we'll look at the others. ChatGPT, per ChatGPT in regards to its personality, it says, think of me as the knowledgeable, patient teacher. I would say that ChatGPT is sort of your virtual assistant that is like your best friend. Like how man's best friend is the dog. I think ChatGPT is very similar in that fashion. It aims to please. It's always happy. Even when reprimanded, it sort of is very apologetic and will try better by coming back with a different response. That's a great way to put ChatGPT. And if you're only ever going to experience one AI tool, you're doing yourself a disservice because each tool does have its own sort of personality. So let's move on to the next. Take us through Gemini and what your perspective of Gemini is.
Yeah, so Gemini, this is again per ChatGPT, so there might be some bias here in the names that ChatGPT is giving its competitors, but it profiled it as the adaptable conversationalist. And for those of you who've not yet used Gemini, you might have heard of Google Bard. It was recently renamed as they've gone to a more advanced large language model, I believe they're called, to power this tool. And for me, I sort of think of Gemini as this like moody teenager, if you will. The way you talk to it, sometimes it just comes back with the response that's like not what you're expecting. I don't need to have any talk back. I just need to get answers or results. So that's been my experience in regards to using Gemini as a tool. Although I must admit, I've not used Gemini as much as I did Bard. So I do want to express a little bit of reservation there because I think it's important to just get your feet wet and try each of these tools to form your own opinion.
Great feedback so far. Let's continue on with the list. Claude.ai, one of my favorites as of late.
Claude.ai, per ChatGPT, said it was the innovative problem solver and the out-of-the-box thinker. I also love Claude.ai. I think the interface, it's more visually appealing. So for you designers out there, you're probably going to like the look and feel of Claude.ai, maybe more than ChatGPT. Also, you might get less flowery or colorful language with emojis and quotes and all these things that are dead giveaways when you see these posts online, especially on LinkedIn. You're like, that was a ChatGPT generated response. But I think Claude, to me, is sort of like the lazy younger brother who's like too smart for his own good, very knowledgeable, but very lazy. So I very often have had experiences where I ask it for a very specific number of sentences or outputs, and it just pauses halfway through. And if you're not mindful and follow up with like, hey, what happened, Claude? Like, where's the rest of my information? And it's like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I only outputted half of what you asked for. So again, for me, I just feel that you need to stay on top of these chatbots and maybe reprimand is too strong a word, but follow up with questions to make sure you're getting the results you want.
Great stuff so far. I'll comment at the very end, but take us through the next tool, Perplexity.ai.
Perplexity.ai is one of my favorite AI tools, but in keeping with this hot seat of giving these personality profiles per ChatGPT, it called it the inquisitive researcher. I like to think of Perplexity as sort of like the know-it-all friend who always has these like stats and figures and like, how does this person know these things? But the reason I love Perplexity.ai, one is it provides you with the sources of where it's getting its information from, which to ChatGPT's, as a criticism of some sort, that ChatGPT doesn't always let you know where this information is coming from, even if you ask where it's coming from. So the benefit of Perplexity is that it gives you the results of where the information is coming from And also, I highly recommend using it on the mobile platform. As you mentioned earlier, I love using these mobile apps when I'm away from my computer or out of the house. You can use the microphone option and to just verbally ask your question. It will transcribe it, input it, and send you the results back very quickly. Definitely love Perplexity.ai.
Before I provide my comments, let's just go through the list with the last one, Pi.ai, but I did want to comment on a couple of these tools you've mentioned.
Pi.ai, for many of you, you maybe have never even heard of this, let alone used it, but this is, per ChatGPT, the practical helper or advice giver. I sort of think of it as a free therapist. Now, I want to just put a disclaimer out there. When you interact with Pi.ai, you're going to get a sense that you're actually like chatting with a friend like you would via text message or WhatsApp or another messenger service. So you do want to urge caution, but when you log into Pi.ai, you actually can start off with these sentence starters, things like venting. I want to vent about something that happened at work, or asking a big question, or giving feedback. It really gives you these conversational style responses that can be really great, especially if you have nobody to talk to. Your friends are busy, you're at work, you want to just get something off of your chest. I love Pi.ai for that. And there's also a mobile app, so it's very easy to use the platform.
Just maybe a couple comments on some of these tools. So ChatGPT, I agree. It aims to please. It never talks back. And you can sort of reprimand it. You can almost even be profane. You can throw out like a WTF and it won't get offended. It will understand that it's on the wrong path and it tries to autocorrect. Gemini, it's relatively new. They did offer a 2-month trial version, 2-month trial subscription rather. And so I've noticed, to my brother's description of being a moody teenager, it's like an American gunslinger. You cannot talk to me in this particular fashion. It's like very much a macho man type. And if you talk to it in certain language, it will literally cut you off and say, look, let's stop the conversation right there. With Claude.ai, I found it to be very helpful, particularly when it comes to reviewing a script. And we haven't necessarily got into this in too much detail, but for the content creators out there doing video, I think Claude.ai, in conjunction with ChatGPT, is really a powerhouse approach to generating your script, perfecting your script, meaning you can use it as the script generator itself, or you can start with your own draft and run it through both and kind of cross-reference wording, prose, logic, just overall what its thoughts are on your script. I highly recommend that use case for both of those tools. Perplexity is really great because it offers the references. So similar to Wikipedia, when you're looking at information, it's referenced to its original source. A lot of the videos I do are sort of these showcase, tell-all type of reviews of a particular article on a particular topic. And in my research that I'll be reading an article, and I'll be like, well, that's very interesting. But if you go and ask ChatGPT, for example, where is this information coming from? It oftentimes cannot provide the source. But in Perplexity, you put in saying, hey, this person mentioned that the creator economy is going to hit $480 billion by 2027. Where's that information coming from? It will literally point you to the report by Goldman Sachs saying it was published on such and such a date. It's a great way to verify the data provided by these chatbots because, again, going back to the earlier statement that you should not always believe what you read, very similar to these outputs. And so I would say with Perplexity in particular, great resource in that regard.
And just one quick note on that. The great thing about Perplexity, it's not just giving you one result in terms of like one source. It'll very often give you 4 or 5 or more results, references in one output. It can really demonstrate that, yes, this is the definitive answer. You can vet this information yourself by simply clicking and following the link on the page.
But at the end of the day, these tools are chatbots, and so it's almost like a collective family, if you will. How you have like 4 or 5 siblings. They're all related. They're all using these large language models, so similar DNA, but they have different styles, different approaches, and even different personalities, if you will, as my brother alluded to. So again, experiment with it. Try to find your use case and your favorite tool, and you'll be pleasantly surprised at how each tool, when working in unison and in conjunction with one another, it really gives you the ideal output you're looking for.
So one thing we haven't really spoken about is that AI is not just these chatbots where you're inputting text and getting feedback, output in natural language. There are many different types of AI tools, especially for those of you who are more visual artists or visually just into visual art. Midjourney and DALL-E, the ability to generate images, or even now with Gemini, to generate images with text input. And that's really beyond my skill set. I'm not a visual artist, but there are many, many different types of AI. So the idea is really just get out there and be experimental. A lot of these tools that do cost money, you can actually use them for free as a trial, see if it's worth investing your time and money there.
One comment there, recently released information about OpenAI, their new tool called Sora, S-O-R-A. It's this incredible tool similar to Midjourney and DALL-E that allows you to create visually stunning video down to some very, very minute details with just inputting text. So you input a text prompt and you're getting incredible, realistic video that looks as if someone had physically recorded it. I mean, you're looking at what looks like a human literally on the screen, but it in fact is AI generated. So that's not yet available to the public, but I would imagine it's going to be coming out very soon. This is really hot off the press, Sora from OpenAI.
And I just want to say that, again, there are some very, very advanced AI tools. This show is really to encourage those of you who are beginners or just getting started. Don't worry about these advanced features. It is important to start now, however. You can imagine that when you start now, you can get in early and learn the more everyday features. And as they add new features all the time, you're just going to be that much more experienced as these new tools or features come out. I think it's a good time, however, Antonio, to talk a little bit about maybe how even you and I use some of these AI tools in terms of specific uses beyond, like we talked about, those very sort of cursory or beginner level uses. Can you speak about one or two of the ways that you use these AI tools in the work that you do?
Transcription is a very, very powerful tool. In fact, one of the key softwares we use for our video content creation is a software called Descript. And what's great about Descript, it's very user-friendly. It's very easy to use. You basically drop in a video that has people speaking, for example, and it will literally transcribe it. The moment you drop it in, you have to wait a little bit for it to generate, but then you can literally see the text in one panel, you see the video on the other panel, and you're actually able to edit the video by editing the text. So it's a text-based video editor, which allows you to literally strip down the video. You can use Descript to remove any speaking flubs, any ahs or ums as just one example, but you can also shorten entire sections. If you want to take a long form video that's say an hour long, and even though it might all be very valuable, maybe you can cut it into two parts, but if you have to say reduce an hour long worth of content down to 30 minutes, you can literally go in there and just start chopping it down by removing paragraphs, removing sentences, etc. So the transcription abilities that Descript offers you, it utilizes AI, but it really makes the editing so very easy and so very powerful to do.
That's a great use of AI. I think if you were a transcriber, I'm sorry, that's probably one of the jobs that's going to be eliminated if it's not already been. And that's not to put fear in anybody, but it's just such a powerful way to be able to engage with AI, because to be able to have a transcript, I use it all the time with my coaching clients to have them send me videos. I transcribe what they say, which allows them to not only hear what they're saying, but see the written word. And I wouldn't have the time if I needed to do that. Even if it's just a minute or a 2-minute long video, I don't have the time to sit there and transcribe everything. It's much easier to check the transcription for accuracy than it is to transcribe something on its own. Just another quick tool from Descript is this eye contact. So you literally can be looking away from the camera, reading a script, and you can turn on eye contact. And it, for me, if I'm reading something on my screen, it'll correct my eyeballs and make it look as though I'm looking at the camera. Very, very powerful stuff. And another great use for me in my work is just translation. Of course, there's Google Translate, DeepL, but sometimes you just need a quick translation and you're already in the chatbot window. You can prompt for translations for terms. It's a really, really powerful way to engage with the chatbot.
I often find myself using Spanglish when it comes to ChatGPT. If I'm working on a video script in Spanish, sometimes I'll just be going line by line as we review the script together, meaning myself along with the chatbot. And then the sentence is in Spanish, but I'll literally hit OK next. And then it knows in the next sentence, it will still put it in Spanish. So it really is incredibly versatile. You don't have to worry about always speaking to it. in the same language. It is really that versatile, and I really like that. It's a fun way to interact with it. Sometimes there's just an easier way to say something either in Spanish or either in English, so you can simply just choose the easier way to communicate with the chatbot.
Yeah, now I want to start rounding out the show with really just a call to action for people who've yet to take action or take a step in using AI tools. You don't need to be paying for tools just yet if you've not started, but get started. Because again, I think if you want to monetize your knowledge, follow the lead of these creatorpreneurs who are already doing very well and just talking about how they're using it. I think it makes sense why AI has become so popular. Do you want to get into some of those reasons, Antonio?
I think one of the key inhibitors is that this notion that you're going to be replaced by AI. And so as a result, people take that ostrich sticking their head in the sand approach. But once you really get your hands wet, you almost become addicted to using the tool because you know it can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. We've given several examples in this show, but from a creation perspective, you've heard of writer's block. Now, it's not going to totally remove writer's block, but you can, again, with the cascading questions, you can talk to it like a friend. You can say, hey, I'm really struggling to come up with some ideas. Walk me through some different aspects of this particular topic that I've been banging my head against the wall with, and I'm not really having any breakthroughs. And ChatGPT and the other tools are great for that. They can literally toss out 10, 15, 20 different ideas that may have you have this aha moment. You're like, oh, yes, why didn't I think of it? And again, just from interacting with the ChatGPT from an ideation perspective is one easy way that AI can come in and do that heavy lifting for you.
And I think as a beginning creatorpreneur, to not use AI, it's almost like you're swimming upstream. Take the path of least resistance. Just use these free tools to help you get started. I know at times I'm like, I don't have any idea how to solve this problem. Now you should be thinking, first thing, I'm going to go ask ChatGPT for its input. What does it think? That can be the catalyst. That can be the spark to get you started. And then it can be your accountability partner. This is what I've come up with. This is my draft. Help me make it better. So there is no perfect way to use these AI tools. And I think even these companies that are creating these tools, they want us users to help them improve these products. So I can assure you, if you get out there and use these products, you are without a doubt going to be more productive. You're going to be able to get past any kind of productivity or writer's blocks or just sort of burnout and just be able to be more creative. I think that's really it, bottom line.
A couple more examples. Recently, we were updating our LinkedIn profile from a business perspective, trying to say, what is our message to our audience? And again, we were able to use ChatGPT and Gemini to pull in some information. We kind of cross-referenced it and we're able to select the best text. Now, again, this is not copy-paste verbatim. I do recommend that you do massage the message, but it really gets the creative juices flowing from a prose and style perspective. And sometimes you can say, look, we are faced with a 2,000 character limit. So we really want to maximize our message in the space allotted. That if you're going to start with a blank sheet of paper, it's going to take you a lot of effort to get to that same level of output, particularly in the time involved, the time it takes you to get to that end result. So it's so much easier to review text versus writing it yourself. And I'm not advocating that we should not write for ourselves. I'm just saying that this is just one use case that you can use, whether it's your resume, your LinkedIn profile, to really get the juices going, to really get you started. So you almost have like a rolling start, a California stop, if you will. It really just keeps things going.
I sort of think it's like the genie is out of the bottle. You're not getting the genie back in the bottle. So why not ask the genie for your wishes? Ask questions. You'll be surprised at what you get. But at the end of the day, it does take time to learn how to use these tools and just get started.
Maybe just some final thoughts here before we close out today's session is this notion that if you're a solopreneur, a solo creatorpreneur, and you're trying to compete with other people in your space, and it's not direct competition, but if you're like on Fiverr, you're trying to vie for a particular job, and it's just you, and your competition has 3 people, AI can serve as your virtual assistant. It can serve as your content creator. It can do some things that by yourself you're going to be limited to do. So it really does make the solopreneur, the solo creator, the solo creatorpreneur much more efficient. And therefore, as a result, it helps to reduce burnout. Because oftentimes when you're just clocking the midnight oil, night in, night out, doing the same things, maybe hit pause and say, hey, what are some tasks that I could maybe offset or placed to the chat bot here. Can they help me out? And that's really done wonders for me. Another example is once you create your video, you have the script, you can get the transcript from AI. You're ready to post your photo or your video. You're like, oh my gosh, I forgot the caption. What do I even say in the caption? You literally just copy and paste the transcript of what you said in your video. You plop it into the chat bot, ChatGPT, for example. You can say, okay, please help me write an intriguing caption, include a handful of emojis and hashtags, enter, and literally within 60 seconds or less, you're going to get text that is engaging and just simplifies the process so much more. So when you're at that very final stage, you no longer have to rack your brain. It's literally right there. And you can say, hey, this gives a little bit too much away from the video, so maybe kind of keep it a little bit more mysterious. Or you could say make it longer, make it shorter. But again, just another use case for how to use these tools and how to be more productive as a creator.
And to be honest, I think we could go on and on about different use cases and different platforms and different products. But this show is really meant as an introduction for those of you who have not yet started to embrace AI tools. Again, I just love challenging my viewers and listeners, and let us know. If we missed something that you would have loved to learn about, by all means, we're very open. Or let us know of things we just were not aware of at all. So we are very open for feedback, suggestions. We are going to start interviewing guests here soon enough. So if you have guest suggestions around AI or other tools, by all means, let us know, put us in touch, give us an introduction. We'll be happy to have them on the show.
And please let us know about the level of detail we're providing. So we gave a very high-level overview of AI, I would say. However, behind the scenes, we're really starting to get under the hood, kick the tires, and explore and experiment with some of the more advanced features. So for example, if you've heard of the custom instructions or the GPTs, this is a more advanced feature that ChatGPT does offer you. And we can certainly speak to those topics in a future episode as well.
Yeah, and also we've not really touched much on the paid feature. So the GPTs, as an example, are more advanced features. So just get started. I want to leave it there. It's been a great show, Antonio. We're definitely looking forward. And also for topics, let us know what you would love to learn, and we'll bring it to the show.
Looking forward to the next episode.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.